Hello. One of the one of the requirements of working at a metal shop was that you have to smoke cigarettes. So it's like whatever. I'm just kidding. Um, so when you're thinking about free will or the ability to move with your own self, and the thing that gives you the idea that you're doing something is contrasting where the body is versus where it could have been or where it could be. And you can press against those possibilities. You press against the possibility of your body being in a different state than it's currently in. So you press it into place, and then it moves somewhere else. But you can be aware of this potentiality without actually changing how your body's moving. So, for instance, if I'm walking down the sidewalk, I can press against all the potentialities of me doing something other than simply walking on the sidewalk like I am doing. And there's latent power or latent potential in that knowledge and that feeling space of what could be versus what is currently happening. So I was thinking about it. What is the difference between us walking down a sidewalk and imagining or pressing, energetically pressing against the quantum potentiality reality field, quantum potentiality reality field, mouthful. What's the difference between that and doing the same thing with the rest of the surroundings? Because the tree is inside of your quantum reality potentiality field. So are the birds and the flashlight in the sky, cars, other humans, the sidewalk itself, the mini cigar, miniature cigar, it. That's just a fancier way of saying cigarette. But you can do the same thing with the other parts of your reality that you consider to be not yourself. In other words, every other part other than your body. So you can move other things physically, and you do so by pressing energetically internally your hand into some other thing, move it, or your foot, or your head, ass cheek, whatever. You can move anything with anything. But that requires close proximity to you physically. So what would happen if you did the same thing with some of the surrounding objects? Of course, with respect to them as beings, if they're beings, like if it's a tree and you just get up in there and start pushing around, you might get spanked or something. Maybe try it with a fire hydrant at first. But you can get in there and feel around a little bit. Feel around with where it's at, where it could be, where it has been, what motions it's been doing, and see how you can play with it. Kind of like Aurora's flying rainbow lasagna dance, where you get in a pose and you start moving and flowing and being very aware of your surroundings, but not in an intrusive way. And it's very important to remember that part. It's very important to remember that part, because that part is part of the reason why you're trapped in a body in the first place. Or, confined. You can conceptually characterize this stayingness in the body however you want. You can say, I've been blessed with the position of maintaining this here vessel. You can put it positive, you can put it negative, you can not acknowledge it, you can do anything you want with it. I think the speed limit is 25. Pretty sure that's not 25. But that's his prerogative. So but you have to remember when you're doing this, if you're trying this practice, you don't have to remember. It would be wise to remember that your energetic core, you have responsibility for that. So if you're okay, so let's think about it for a second. Everyone's connected, but we all have the veils up. So we're, depending on how numb you are, or how many blocks you have, how saturated your body is with, toxins, cigarette smoke, whatever you got going on in there, is determining your level of conscious, aware connectedness with your surroundings. So it's good to remember that when you're putting out your little ball of energy and you're projecting yourself, okay, when you're thinking about something, you're projecting yourself to that thing's energetic essence. And I feel like these little guys know about me, right? So they're hopping up and moving around and having conversations about it. Like, who the fuck is this guy? We're just trying to sing over here. So like, my presence is very intrusive to these little bird creatures. Yeah, they're gonna have a powwow about border security and upping the patrol and upping the level of security officers. All this kind of stuff is gonna happen now just because of this one very simple walking by. To me, which is just walking by. Like, I interrupted their whole orchestra. People bought tickets in advance and all this stuff. But on the other side, you can say, the bird population has been having the same orchestra every, week without ever interruption, and they're getting bored or something. So some of them are like, oh, something exciting is happening. We get to fly around and cause a ruckus now, which they wouldn't have been able to do in that exact way had I not come and intruded. But back to my my earlier point, and most humans aren't aware of it. And if they are aware of it, they're aware of it at a very rudimentary level, where it's just like, and you don't need to be aware of it beyond that for the most part, because there is a certain level of, I didn't know what I was doing type of thing going on. Plausible deniability and all that good stuff. It's very difficult to be tried in a higher dimensional court of law if you're energetically intruding on somebody. But no doubt it happens on some levels. But if you actually wish to interact with other beings and not just be seen as a parasite or an energy vampire or a conqueror, a hierarchical mindset creature, if you want to be able to travel without, it's a learning process. For almost everybody, it's a learning process. But if you think about someone, they're receiving that somehow. If a person comes into your mind, you're sending something out to them, they're receiving something on some level, and the same if they think about you. And that the whole the whole range is there as well. You know, there's psychic attacks at the more violent level, just by thinking about somebody or talking about them, speaking their name. And then there's this sort of silly version, which is PR stuff, which is like a formal accusation of somebody or some company via whatever form of media allows it to get out. And then after that happens, then of course all of the actual energetic interplay happens and is a bit dictated by some of the more public things, but it's still the same stuff, and it's just beings and their thought forms bantering with each other or against each other, sometimes in fear, sometimes in anger. It's just emotions though, and identities and things like that, back and forth across whatever spectrum allows it. And it does happen. And there's a possibility for becoming more quiet internally, so your self radar system is not just bleeping on everybody's radar, on whatever form of radar they have, and it allows you, if you wish, to watch and, you know, you're allowed to see things from a neutral or passive or I don't give a shit sort of position if you want. And there's also nothing stopping you to carry a seed of discontent or, you know, purity of intention, if you want to use that terminology. There are no guarantees, is what I'm trying to say, in all of these conceptual, structural thought containers for movement. But if you've been in there for long enough, then you start learning what the sort of rules are. You learn what respect within the thought system is, and you get sort of a track record, I think. it's all out there in the open. Nothing is hidden. And I don't mean out there in the open like you can see it with your eyeballs. Everything is hidden via that method of observation, but as a spirit being looking out, you see everything, because all the hidden things proclaim themselves loudly when you look upon a situation. Very loudly. And there's a certain amount of the notion that it's good for things to be observed without causing a ruckus if you're not personally involved or implicated. Everything is seen anyway. Even outside of yourself, there's the all-seeing presence, which looks out through every single aperture all at the same exact moment and balances everything. And it doesn't balance everything by running around and balancing everything. It balances everything by being aware that as a totality, with all the polarity spectrums, it is balanced. That's how it balances it. It doesn't go running around killing the bad guys and praising the good guys. I don't know if that makes much sense, but anyway, you can interact with everything. And it's interacting with you all the time, whether you know it or not. You know, you walk down in the midst of some weeds and grasshoppers pop up right before you step on them. You walk by a choir of birds at their song rehearsal and they all start yelling and they fly up and they go gossip about you behind your back. It's happening all the time. It's just that the humans are very silly and obtuse, and they just imagine that all of these other societies don't exist, or that they have no power. You know, they imagine that they could just go grab a whole species, like say cows for instance, and just like, hey motherfucker, like we're gonna keep you in cages and we're gonna turn you into hamburgers, we're gonna call you Big Macs after you've done your transformation, and we're not paying you, we're not acknowledging your energetic essence, we're not respecting you whatsoever. You know, we don't have pretend constitutions to pretend protect your pretend rights, like all these things. Not even the pretense is given. Mainly because the cows aren't speaking in English. The cows aren't like, hey bitch, like, don't, stop. And the cows aren't silly enough to think that some form of violence on any physical plane is going to achieve something worthwhile for the being that is doing the violence. They're not that silly. So they're like, yeah, this is it. Like, this is what we're doing here. We're gonna get butchered by these silly human creatures who are only doing it because the beast mind system has them thinking that they need to, because they aren't allowed to eat unless they make magic green papers. And you know, there's excuses for everything, but if you decide not to do that, or if you carry yourself in a way that's respectful to the things around you, then more dimensions will open up to you, and you'll be able to communicate and move and flow with other forms of energy. And also, you'll be protected by other forms of energy that take a liking to you. So, like, if you're in a forest and some daft, dense creature that wants to eat you or wants to harm you or wants to whatever tries to do it, then, you know, they're all methods of things that can happen in there that will thwart that creature's attempts of doing anything without it knowing it and probably, possibly without you knowing it, and it's just quiet. And nobody ever knew anything was attempting to happen or not. Like, that's the main way that the threats and things are neutralized, is under the surface things that don't require any acknowledgement even, necessarily. And that's why a being can walk around in an infinite multi-dimensional plane that has other dimensions filtering in and out of it all the time, and other beings filtering in and out of the whatever frequency that this particular being is moving around at, without, the person having a explosion of extraneous thoughts within their mind and then just simply going insane because they're like, this doesn't work, can't do it. So like the people that are deemed as psychotic are just people that were given a glimpse into the multi-dimensional nature of the realm or of existence, and a whole bunch of filters got turned off, like a bunch of earplugs got pulled out of various multi-dimensional ears, and then all of a sudden just chatter is happening and things are being seen and all this stuff, and there aren't enough guides to hold enough hands to protect everyone from everything, even though there's plenty of attempts to do so. So some people do what is called going crazy, and then they have all kinds of lovely things happen in psych wards and antipsychotic medication, labeling as schizophrenic and multi-personality, bipolar, and so on. And that person doesn't have a great dream. They have a bad dream for a little while. But what I was trying to say or allude to is that when you're walking down in between some trees, right, for the most part, you are not sitting there saying, all right, left foot forward, there it goes, right foot forward, there it goes, left foot forward, there it goes, lungs in, lungs out, lungs in, lungs out, all right, thoughts, populate enough so we can remember where we're at and how we get back home, and what else? Body temperature, yeah, pretty stable here. Flashlight is not being too intrusive, and sound volume's okay. It's not turned up so loud that it's hurting my head. And okay, so multi-dimensional possibilities. I could be climbing each and every one of these trees. I could not be climbing these trees. I could be mean and start chopping branches off. I could also not do that. I could, anything, whatever. And so the energetic friction that is between the potentiality matrix that is within you, which of course all of which is not happening, only what's happening is the one linear timeline, which happens, but your knowledge of or pressing against of the linearity one up onto and around the multidimensional one, which contains all the possibilities, that hum back and forth like a reverberation. It's like that's your life force. So you feel inside of yourself and you feel like atoms and molecules and everything are just tingling and bouncing and jumping around, possibilities and everything bouncing around in your mind, and you can put your foot this way, you can put your foot that way, you can stop, anything, everything, right? That's it. So that friction piece, that's kind of the one that's holding tension and not necessarily acting all the time, the one that's not consciously making decisions all the time, that piece or part can be sent out to the surroundings, and it can press or pull against the energetic linearity timeline fraction of the fractal that entity, say tree for instance, the tree also is like, yeah, I could swing this way, I could swing that way, a wind could come in and blow me down, I could grow fast, I could grow slow, I could just die, I could produce fruit. I could produce just one fruit. I could not produce fruit at all. You know, somebody come and chop me down. Somebody could harvest me. Somebody could not harvest me. There's a bunch of potentiality possibilities for all the trees as well, although they may not be necessarily able to enact everything as well. Like maybe a tree, if it wants to move a branch, has to be like, hey, wind, motherfucker, my branch over here is getting sore because it's been sitting in the same spot and you've just been off, you know, I don't know, like fucking with the orange orchard all day. Like, I need some attention over here, you know? And then the wind comes over and he's like, whoosh, and the tree moves his branch around. He's like, oh, thank you. I was sitting there forever and I was getting stiff, you know? So it still requires, and you could say the same thing with your arm. You'd be like, you know, you're sitting there on your throne, your invisible self in the invisible throne trying to tell the arm that the left butt cheek itches. So I'd be like, left butt cheek itches, arm, okay? Can you please do something about it? And you could just be like, yeah, I'm the king. I don't have to even say it. I just, there it goes. I just scratched my butt. And you don't even give a shit about it. Or you could be like, yeah, you know, I need to enlist the help of bicep and, you know, the latissimus dorsi in the back, and, you know, I need to be mindful with this maneuver, make sure I don't expend too much energy, and be grateful for all the muscles that are helping with this, with the blood that's flowing and bringing energy to all of the skin, which is also an organ that helps me to feel things, you know. And because you're basically organizing an army to produce the action, which is moving your arm back and scratching your butt because you're itchy or your butt was itchy. And it's not just you and your butt. It's like I'm sure your butt has its own essence over there. And he's like, man, I'm getting something's wrong over here. I need help. But still, it's it's more of like a team effort. And you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. If your butt starts itching too much, you're going to scratch it, whether you're even conscious of it or not. And then if you are conscious of it, you can be conscious at different levels. And all of us, no matter how refined we think we are, you know, on some level, we're just blundering around and just disrupting armies here and, you know, squashing through like mountain ant hills and just trotting on everybody, you know, disrupting bird choirs and everything, you know. Probably politicians somewhere are upset they were on private land, even though they forgot to put the sign up. There's so many things happening with every single movement on Earth and on everywhere, and you know, half the people should be getting hissy fits about it, but they have too many other things to worry about. So there's not even enough energy to run around trying to protect all the privacies, right, that need to be protected. It starts popping out in some weird direction when too much of that starts happening, and then you have silly things on TV like Donald Trump and, you know, robot politicians and intrusive AI and everything. You got all these things. And the parade goes on.